Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by Short & Associates, legal recruiters in Louisiana and Texas. And by Wyndham Garden Lafayette.
From the French Press in downtown Lafayette, we're out to lunch with Christian Mader, publisher and editor of The Current. It's business, Acadiana style.
Welcome to Out to Lunch. I'm Christian Mader. Here's a cliche. Why hire a photographer when a phone can do the job? That was the conventional wisdom 13 years ago when the iPhone debuted. And since then, the lenses have gotten better, and people have started making millions taking pictures of their lives on Instagram. But the professional photographer never went obsolete, as predicted. And that's because there are plenty of circumstances that require a professional touch. Weddings, portraits, magazine features, and even the intimacy of the bedroom. And that doesn't mean making a living behind the camera isn't a hustle. Success in photography takes relentless self-promotion, creativity, and maybe a little luck. My guests today both have left steady jobs to hoof it as freelance photographers. April Courville got a master's in marketing and wound up in Minnesota after school, where she fell into boudoir photography, which are intimate, seductive portraits taken for romance or personal empowerment. April worked in marketing when she moved back to Lafayette, and she's built a big enough book of business to strike out on her own with Danette Photography. Today, her business draws clientele from around the state. April, welcome to Out to Lunch.
Thank you for having me.
Paul Q detoured into photography while on a path toward law school. Taking pictures was a hobby until he figured out he could get paid to do it, and he stuck with it after graduating from UL with a degree in political science. He worked as a photojournalist for the Daily Advertiser for several years until leaving to work on his own. And Paul's work captures Acadiana's boucheries, festivals, and celebrations in vivid detail. And you can find his photos in several local and regional publications. Paul, welcome to Out to Lunch.
Thank you for having me, Christian.
So, April, sexuality isn't quite so taboo or private like it used to be, right? Still, I imagine that checking the boudoir photographer box, if there is such a thing, on a tax form might raise an eyebrow or two. People aren't necessarily that woke everywhere. How do you differentiate what you do from what, say, the uninformed might expect? I mean, do you still run into people who hear your work and think, okay, well, that sounds like objectifying or provocative to me?
Yeah, absolutely. You had mentioned that I started the company and doing boudoir photography in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is a larger market than here in South Louisiana. So it was a bit of an adjustment whenever I did come back because, it's still slightly more conservative in this area. And so even today, still I get people that are like, oh, what do you do? And I have to explain to them what boudoir photography is. Or if they already know, I kind of get the look of like the disapproving grandmother, They're like, oh, that.
How do you usually explain it to them?
I empower women and help women feel better about their own bodies through the art of photography. And there's a kind of a big question about like what defines boudoir photography, like what makes it boudoir and what makes it something else. And I kind of subscribe to the thought that it's really whatever makes you feel good, Some people in a lot of photography forums and groups that I'm in, will share images of a woman in a pair of cute shorts and a tank top. And they're like, that's not boudoir. I'm like, well, but why not? My whole purpose is if a woman has been through something that she feels like she came out on the other side of, maybe it's a divorce or an addiction or cancer or an abusive relationship or something like that. If she has fought those battles and she came out on the other side and she wants to celebrate it, then who cares what it's called,
That's interesting. So my first thought, and I imagine that would be the same for a lot of people, is that you hear boudoir photography and think it's about something that, a woman or a partner might do for their partner, right?
Right.
Like, I'm going to get these pictures of myself, as a matter of a romantic gift for somebody else. But it sounds like you find that people do this not necessarily for their partner, whoever that may be, but rather take the photos for themselves.
A lot of times the idea starts out that way. You have an anniversary coming up, or you're getting married, or your husband is celebrating a milestone birthday, and it starts out as the planting of the seed, the idea. But once they kind of do some exploration, they realize, well, I have lost a lot of weight, or I'm about to turn 50, or our kids are out of the house. There's a much deeper level and a more personal level than just the gift for the guy ends up just being kind of like icing on the cake.
So I feel like, for myself, like anytime I get my picture taken, period, right? Regardless of if I'm, doing it to be sensual, I might see a picture of myself and say, I don't look that good. I find all the things that are sort of wrong with me. And so how is it that getting a photo of myself in such like an intimate way is something that I might look at and say, this makes me feel very powerful or very good about myself? How does that work?
Well, I was telling a friend yesterday, I kind of want to start changing my title to photographer/therapist because I get to know my clients on a really intimate level, and there's a level of trust there. And I think Paul could probably relate to that too. If you're a photographer, to be a good photographer, you have to get your clients to trust you. So it's really about the whole experience. I mean, from the time that they book their session and reach out, we walk them through the entire process. So when they show up for their shoot day, they're ready. They might be nervous and kind of scared, but they know that they're in good hands. And a lot of times, a woman maybe the day before her shoot will text and be like, oh my God, I don't know what to wear. I have all these outfits and nothing fits right. And should I bring this, And I'm like, just bring it all. Like, we'll go through it. And they're like, okay, I trust you. I'll just let you do your thing. And like, that's a big compliment for me as a photographer because they trust me and I don't take that lightly. So I guess to answer your question is it's definitely that trust and the ability for them to be vulnerable. It's a very vulnerable thing, boudoir photography, but we assure them by kind of walking them and holding their hand the entire time so that when they're in the studio and they're in front of the camera, they already know that what is going to come out is going to be good. And actually, I had a client the other day who came, and the whole reason why she wanted to do it is she was like, I'm a very modest person. I don't see myself as this sexy woman, and I want to be bold. I want to feel more like a sensual being. I want to feel like a woman. And when she saw her images, she looked like a sexy woman, and she was having like a really hard time dealing with it. She was like, oh my God, I can't believe that's me. Like, this is so weird. She wasn't comfortable with it. And I kind of had to stop and say, okay, it is okay for you to look at pictures of yourself and think, that's hot.
To Paul, you left, I would say, steady work, and I'm using steady work in journalism, right? I can speak to that. And it seems like that's kind of worked out for you. But was your decision to leave, the grind of the daily newspaper, was that because you kind of saw the writing on the wall and you were like, you know what, this isn't going to work out for newspapers long term? Or was it, no, I want something that working in a newspaper can't offer me?
So everything started converging at one point. My life, everything just started coming together at that one point. And at the end of 2015, I saw where the industry was going. I felt like I could probably do better financially. And that's just a fact of reality in the journalism industry. It's a very taxing industry to work in full time. So, with the way the industry was going, the way my life was going, my mom had just had a stroke about a year before I left the paper. So I decided, maybe if I'm going to be stressed, it's going to be on my own terms. Yeah. And so, it was something I decided to take in my own hands. And here we are a little over 4 years later, and things are going all right.
So you've been able to make more money freelance than you did as a newspaper photographer?
Yeah, I've been able to live decently comfortable and afford the things I need to. But like everybody else, we could always stand to do a little better. It's a fun industry to be in, and first and foremost, like it's just something that absolutely I'm completely passionate about. It's something I wake up and go to sleep about thinking about every day. So for the past 10 years, that's all I've thought about, and to have that as my job, that's the main priority for me. So it's been pretty good since then.
So, you went from sort of shooting whatever, and it seems like you've kind of come to specialize maybe more in cultural events. I mean, I've seen a lot of your work around, boucheries. It seems like you frankly have kind of embedded yourself in sort of the neo-Cajun culture that's out there.
Just a little, like through my work, I've been able to make like a lot of very good friends and a lot of people who I consider family even, through my work in the Cajun and Creole community. And so to witness all of that stuff, it's stuff that I was adjacent to whenever I was growing up, but it's a lot of stuff that I'm seeing for the first time, or stuff that's still relatively new to me. So it's very educational for me on a personal level, and to be exposed to boucheries or creative Mardi Gras. It's been a very educational process for me, and it's very fulfilling to make friends, make genuine connections with people in the field, and build a rapport with the community. And through my work, see Louisiana like I hadn't maybe seen it before.
Yeah. Who are you shooting for? I mean, like, it feels like there's a lot of these, every Mardi Gras season, I'm sure this place just sort of gets flooded over with magazine photographers that just like want to see the real Louisiana. I mean, like, who are you taking these pictures for?
It's funny enough, the real Louisiana, this past weekend, I was on the road for 4 days, and I actually shot for Louisiana Travel, the State Tourism Bureau. So, that was a pretty fun weekend, and, the client I was working for, they gave me full reign. That's a dream. A dream assignment to have somebody trust you with that much.
Do you see like people getting, I hate to put it in these terms, but like tired of it? I mean, like, is there just like a never-ending market for Mardi Gras photos, for like pictures of somebody
like chasing
carving up
a
a
chicken?
pig? Yeah, I mean, like, I see them every year, and like for the publication, right? We publish them, and it's like sometimes I think like, who really wants to see this stuff?
Right.
Like, why are we? But it never seems to stop.
Yeah, I think for us around here, it's stuff, and especially in our friend circles, it's stuff that we often see a lot, especially on social media. But it's still, to the world at large, Cajun culture is semi-mysterious. A lot of people hear Louisiana, they just think of Bourbon Street, they think of Mardi Gras in New Orleans. But Cajun culture, Creole culture, just in general in South Louisiana, it's something that people are really starting to wake up to, and I think that I'm just a small part, but it's cool being a part of exposing that culture to a greater audience.
So, April, I'm kind of curious. You were in marketing before, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, put your marketing hat on for a second and tell me how you go about marketing this business in this market. Like, going out and saying, like, I am going, to strike out with my new boudoir photography business, and I'm going to go find clientele, and I'm going to put my wares in the marketplace. How did you do that?
I find that the more I get to meet people face to face, the more they realize that I'm not this like scary monster person.
Was that a real concern?
Well, a lot of people are like, oh, I've been on the fence, but now that I've met you, they're like, you're just like this awkward, nerdy girl. And I'm like,
so
yeah.
Is it mostly word of mouth? Like, people are saying, I did this shoot, you should really consider it. I think you'd enjoy it. So, and here's the person, or is it something that like, somebody's going to Google and you're going to have,
well, it's a lot of those things. It's definitely a mix. I don't, as a marketer, I don't want all of my clientele to come from one stream, because if that stream dries up, then I'm kind of out of luck. So it's a mix of, I work really hard on my SEO, so I build my website so that, it comes up top of page if somebody searches for a boudoir photographer. I run Facebook ads. I send out email campaigns. I have a VIP Facebook group that, either current clients, past clients, or potential future clients can kind of just support each other and get feedback from different images and testimonials, stuff like that. Referrals are definitely a big part of it. And then events in person too seem to work really well, because once they see like the albums and the products and what the finished item actually looks like, they're, it's like, oh wow, these are really gorgeous. So it's a mix.
Yeah, I mean, like, Paul, to kind of maybe bring you in a little bit on this conversation, right? I mean, this is not you're obviously not doing boudoir photography. Maybe after this conversation you'll get into it.
Maybe I'll try it out. I have April's number,
But I mean, look, photography, whether you're competing with people who think like, all right, I can take my own pictures of my wedding, but I mean, it's a challenging market, I would think. There's a lot of photographers out there.
Yeah.
I mean, so how are you out there separating, what Paul Q does versus somebody else?
So it's like April said, it's all about building relationships in the community, and in the age of social media, I think it's a lot more imperative now to even have your own style and to have your own twist on things.
Yeah.
So I think I've done a decent job with that over
What's
the past
your
10
twist?
years. I don't know, just hyper, like as you described it earlier, hyper detailed, just photos of the culture in Louisiana and making sure that people understand that. Where I'm coming from as a photojournalist is somebody who wants to show you this window into this magical culture that I get to see every day. But maybe you might not get to see it every day, but you should come check it out. So for me, I just want to show the world what I see, and I think the differentiating part for me is that there's a lot of people who shoot the same style as I do who are even better than I am at this type of work in this area. But I think for me, it's just maintaining those relationships and people understanding my reputation in the community goes with the images, like they're one and the same.
You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Christian Mader. I'm talking with freelancer Paul Q and boudoir photographer April Courville. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Christian Mader. I'm talking with freelancer Paul Q and boudoir photographer April Courville. Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit. This is a segment that we're going to call Do As I Say, Not As I Do. So I think anybody who works in any sort of profession, when you're talking shop, people say give me a piece of advice. How do I get started, right? And you might give them the piece of advice that you don't yourself take. So I'll give you an example. We've never done this one before. I'll give you an example. People say okay, well, Christian, I'd like to become a writer. And I say, well, good writers, they read a lot. And I don't read that much, right? I mean, so what's a good piece of advice in your industry, right, that you struggle to follow yourself? April, can we start with you?
Oh, God. I'm so... do not want to admit this. Well, they say whenever you're starting out as a professional photographer, they tell you to shoot everything. Shoot everything. Get behind the camera. Shoot. And I'm like, nah. I don't want to. I mean, I like to shoot, I'll do personal projects and stuff, just to kind of think outside the box a little bit, maybe try a new lens or try a new lighting technique or something like that. But I definitely don't push my creative zone and get out of that little comfort zone as much as they say you should do.
So you kind of focus on the things that you like and maybe hone in on that subject matter rather than kind of getting out there and being a shutterbug.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit more along the thought process of get really good at what you're doing and be a badass at it, instead of just kind of being mediocre at all these things.
Sure. Paul, what about you? What's a piece of advice that you give people that you don't take?
To always be prepared for any situation.
Okay.
Which I think at this point I'm pretty decent at winging it. And if any commercial clients of mine are listening, I'm always prepared for your photo shoots. But it's with photojournalism, you kind of have to learn to roll with the punches. Something might not go your way the very last second, and you just have to be prepared for any sort of situation that might arise. So that's why my car is just filled with stuff that I might be able to use. I kind of look like a hoarder sometimes, but for the most part, being prepared is one of the most important things you could do as a photojournalist. But oftentimes I'm just found winging it and just shrugging my shoulders and trying to figure it out on the situation. But I think I've done it long enough that I can be pretty comfortable doing that.
So did you get that? So I read that you were an Eagle Scout.
Yeah.
So did you get that from the Boy Scouts?
Yeah, it's actually
be prepared.
It's actually something that was instilled in me from an early age that I should probably practice a lot better.
Did your Scoutmaster say Paul, you're pretty prepared, but you're not quite prepared enough? Was that your?
He's like, oh, you could have packed this and that.
Yeah.
A little bit more, a few more matches this time. It's always a fun thing to understand that I've been doing it for a long time, at least in the grand scheme of my life. Yeah, it's been a third of my life that I've been doing photography. So it's something that I feel comfortable knowing that if a situation arrives, I can handle it. So that's part of being prepared, mentally at least.
Do you guys feel like it's gotten more challenging to become a photographer in this market, or maybe generally, like if I said, look, guys, I really want to do this, like after this meeting, I mean, would you say, Christian, there's enough of us out here already, or do you feel like, there is room in the marketplace for more people to try this in Lafayette?
So I've seen it has ebbed and flowed, because I remember whenever I was kind of like just leaving college and that shift from film to digital happened and everybody had those little point and shoot cameras, the need for professional photographers went way down, because everybody had a digital camera, and so everybody wanted to be a photographer. So there was like that challenge, and then they kind of went obsolete because the iPhone came in. But then at that point there was a shift where photographers kind of came back up into play, because nobody was using those point and shoots anymore, and the cameras and the phones were like okay, but not great. But then whenever the cameras became better in the iPhones, the need for photographers went back down. But then I'm seeing recently, probably especially like in the past like year or so, with like the rise of Instagram and everything is curated, we are so conditioned to see expertly curated images that the need for professional photographers has actually gone up again. So it's been like a wave of ebbing and flowing, kind of just depending on what technology does.
I've noticed that like you get these Instagram influencer accounts, and I've known some local photographers who've been like hired to use like legit professional cameras to go and shoot somebody's Instagram account, right? Like we have this image that it's really, the iPhone's doing it, but when you see a lot of these sort of influencer accounts or whatever, how social media has changed it in a lot of ways, to your point, it seems like photographers are getting work now to make the stuff look right on Instagram. I mean, Paul, have you ever been asked to be an influencer's photographer?
Not specifically, and there's nothing I have against that. It's just something I haven't been asked to do yet. Okay. So if anybody's listening, hit me up. I can make your daily occasions look very cool.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Yes, I also like to shoot fashion for anyone that.
There we go. So I haven't been asked to do that, but it's been an interesting evolution. I follow a lot of younger photographers on Instagram from the area, and there's never a better time to be a photographer than the present. And the technology is here. The technology and the apps and everything, the cameras that we have available at our disposal. That's not the hurdle anymore. So it's on us to separate ourselves from the pack as far as what we bring to the table, how we communicate with our clients, and how we photograph the world. So the tools are there, and it's really fun to see people who are in my shoes that who are where I was 10 years ago, coming up and everything. It's really fun to see people like really evolving as the technology evolves with them.
Do you guys feel like there's this sort of a natural ceiling of where you guys can go with this here? I mean, or do you feel like there's a point where you're going to reach where you have to say to yourself, well, I need to move to achieve what I want in my career? Sometimes
I feel that, but I haven't found it yet. So it's cool. This is Louisiana. There's a lot of stuff for me to cover, especially the type of photography I do, and it's just a rich, target-rich environment over here for me. And I feel very fortunate to be, documentary-style photographer in Louisiana. So I haven't found that ceiling just yet. Maybe I'll get there, maybe not. But I really love living here. I love growing up in the state, and growing up through photography in the state. And so I haven't found the ceiling yet. So I'll let you know if I find it.
Okay.
Yeah.
April, I understand that you're able to actually you're drawing clients in from sort of the region, right? I mean, do you feel like the ceiling is pretty high for what you can accomplish here in terms of what your ambitions are as far as being a boudoir photographer?
Yeah, I think it's there. I'm definitely not the first boudoir photographer in the area, and I'm not going to be the last. So there have been other photographers. You know, there was one out of Baton Rouge that was operating a huge operation that was a boudoir photographer, and she was doing amazing things. And she's not around anymore, not because the business didn't succeed, but she decided to pursue something else. You know, so other photographers in the area that are doing what I'm doing are having a fine time staying booked. And I think that the good thing is that because there aren't a ton of us, you know, I draw clients in from Alexandria, Lake Charles, Beaumont, Baton Rouge. So if it were just Lafayette, maybe, but yeah, people come from all over.
No matter how the technology changes, you can't totally disrupt the role of talent in skilled and creative jobs like photography. Maybe everybody can do it, but that doesn't mean that everybody can do it well. Paul and April, you both show that a professional and personal touch aren't likely to go obsolete anytime soon. It's been great talking with both of you. Thanks for joining me on Out to Lunch Acadiana.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
My guests on Out to Lunch Acadiana today have been photographers Paul Q and April Courville. If you want to know what we look like, you can find photos from this show on itsacadiana.com and on our Out to Lunch Acadiana social media. These photos were taken by Travis Goche. You can find more of his work at zoomphotostudio.com. Out to Lunch Acadiana is a production of INO Broadcasting for itsacadiana.com and KRBS 88.7 FM. The producer of our show is Grant Morris. Our technical producer is Eric Morrell. Our associate producer is Molly Richard. Our researchers are Ann Christian and Maggie Mendel. Today's show is engineered by Kieran McIntosh. I'm Christian Mader, editor of The Current, Lafayette's community-owned nonprofit newsroom. For more great stories and conversation, check out thecurrentla.com and sign up for our newsletter. I'll see you again next week at the French Press in sunny downtown Lafayette for more of the ins and outs and ups and downs of Acadiana business on Out to Lunch Acadiana. Until then, take care.
Out to Lunch Acadiana is recorded live over lunch at the French Press in downtown Lafayette. Since 2009, the French Press has been serving Cajun brunch and providing custom catering for uniquely personalized events. The French Press is open 7 days a week till 2 p.m. with dishes like Cajun Eggs Benedict and Sweet Baby Breezes. The Out to Lunch Acadiana theme music, Encore Monsieur Nice Guy, is written by Mitchell Foreman and performed by Mitchell Foreman and Andre Michaud. Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by Short & Associates, legal recruiters in Louisiana and Texas. Support for Out to Lunch Acadiana comes from the Wyndham Garden Lafayette, located off Pinhook near Khalees Saloon. Wyndham Garden Lafayette is a pet and family-friendly hotel with reception space for large and intimate events, free parking, free Wi-Fi, and a free shuttle within 3 miles that includes the airport and downtown restaurants.